Everyone, and welcome back to the Bookish Club for Leaders. This month we are talking about Amy Edmonson's The Fearless Organisation, and psychological safety is a concept that I weave into almost every single workplace conversation I have, and probably some home-place ones as well. And shamelessly, although I've used the concept for years, I had never read the book, which is a bit embarrassing. I had read some articles and watched some videos and listened to quite a lot of other people talk about it, but the book is fascinating, interesting, stands the test of time, and is really great when bookended with their 2025 HBR article that came out last year, talking about where some of the things have gone wrong and where it requires a little bit more nuance. So the favourite way I like to start conversations about psychological safety is, who amongst us has watched the film Shrek, the original? Yes, good. And who remembers when Shrek talks to Donkey about the fact that ogres are like onions? Ogres are like onions, they have layers. And for me, psychological safety is like an ogre, like an onion, it has layers. So the definition of psychological safety is it's a shared belief that it is safe to take interpersonal risks, to speak up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes without the fear of punishment or humiliation. It emerges from leader behavior, like setting the stage, inviting participation, responding productively. So it emerges from that leader behavior and team norms, not from policies or training. So back to Shrek. For me, psychological safety is like onions. There are layers. There are the deep layers which we peel depending on what kind of day we're having and what kind of situations we find ourselves in. I've used this metaphor with very seasoned nuclear leaders, editors in the publishing industry, small business owners and local councils, and many, many more. The aim of this metaphor is to help us all be more deliberate in how we show up in any given moment, what and how we choose to share, and how we can contribute effectively, no matter how we're feeling. The inner layer. If you are having a great day, the inner layer is for you. So you've slept beautifully, the sun is shining, the birds are singing, the squirrels are doing your washing up, you are kicking ass at work, and you are seeing loved ones later. Then you may choose to share the deep and meaningful parts of yourself, the things that are still current, the things that you haven't quite processed and would like a little help in processing, the curiosities that make you feel unsure or a bit uncertain or a bit vulnerable because you don't have that surety, and yet you'd like to share that for the benefit of all. So this is about how you can contribute well and share your own experience. That is, if you're having a great day, share your inner thinking. That is not a carte blanche for every thought, but your inner thinking about the subject that you have been asked to share about. The middle layer, that's the majority of us on any given day. So the middle layer is for when you're having a medium kind of day. Busy, but not hectic. You got your exercise in, but lunch is a bit late. You're feeling a little bit of frazzle, but not overwhelmed. Then if you're in that middle state, choose to share experiences and observations that happened a little while ago. Ones that you had good conversations about, ones that you've had conversations about with friends or colleagues. You've started the processing, or you've done the processing of that experience, and now you are happy to share things at a bit of a distance. And then the outer layer is where we risk getting it quite wrong for ourselves and for those of us around us. So the outer layer of psychological safety is for those days when nothing is going right. Know that it is okay to keep yourself safe here. You don't need to share everything at all times with everyone, especially not with people who have not yet earned the right to those parts of you. You need to know who's in front of you and what you're sharing, and be deliberate about those choices. So that outer layer is, how do you still contribute well when actually all you want to do is hide under your duvet or hide behind a rock? How do you still contribute? That's when you choose to share themes or patterns of observation, things that happened years ago and you've had the chance to process and let go of somewhat. Choose to share things that are 1 or 5 steps removed and not current today. So you can have a conversation about almost any topic at work that's appropriate, and you can still share, you can contribute, you can add to that conversation without risking your own sense of vulnerability or safety. If we risk our own sense of vulnerability and safety, and if we get it a bit wrong and share too much or with the wrong person or in the wrong setting, and we feel crunchy and a bit pained about that, actually that can result in some really negative behaviors on our part, which is negative for us. We feel bad about it, but also has detrimental effects on the people around us and the culture we're trying to lead. So psychological safety, it's been around for a little while. It's a bit of a fancy word. It first came out in the research back in, I think, the 1930s. So it's not a new concept. It is often bucketed under the umbrella term of soft skills, but soft it is not. It is the difference between a team that innovates and one that suffocates, between organizations that learn from failures and one that buries it. It's the difference between people who bring their full selves to work and those who show up as carefully edited versions of themselves. So what's the challenge and why today? Well, the question is, who amongst us works in an industry that feels straightforward, where you're unlikely to run into any problems, where there's no room for improvement or new ideas, and where you operate in total isolation? No? Today, work requires collaboration and teamwork. In fact, since 2019, employees at all levels spend 50% more time collaborating than they did 20 years ago. So you can hire for talent, you can hire for experience and qualifications, but that's not enough. Your talent needs to be able to work together. Yes, we could just tell people what to do or what else. We could continue with psychologically unsafe cultures where we walk on eggshells or face unpredictability at best and outright aggression at worst. We could continue with cultures where we keep our heads down and our mouths shut. But motivation by fear only creates the illusion that goals are being achieved. It is not effective at bringing the creativity, good process, and passion needed to accomplish challenging goals, especially in our knowledge-intensive workplaces of today. Fear is detrimental to good work. Fear diverts the parts of our brain that manages working memory, how we process new information, analytical thinking, creative insight, and problem solving. The opportunity comes up in a 2017 Gallup poll, which found that only 3 in 10 employees strongly agree that their opinions count at work. The question is, what if we move that to 6 out of 10? What wouldn't our give to achieve a potential 27% reduction in staff turnover, a 40% reduction in safety incidents, or a 12% increase in productivity? So question 1, why do people hold back when no one gains from silence? There is a basic asymmetry of psychological safety and societal forces that favor silence over voice. Its self-protection is more important than self-expression. In moments when speaking up might make sense, we all go through a decision-making process weighing up the benefits and the cons. The benefits are often unclear and delayed. The cons are often tangible and immediate. But the rewards are asymmetric too. Self-protection offers a hollow victory compared to the fulfillment of serving an inspiring purpose and being part of a team facing an ambitious goal. The psychological safety is the difference between playing not to lose and playing to win. The voice is mission critical when knowledge is a crucial source of value. So for anything but the only independent or most routine of work, psychological safety is intimately tied to freeing people up to pursue excellence. How many amongst us, how many industries are set up with the expectation that we pursue excellence? How can you do that if people are not safe at work? So we're looking at leadership in action. One of the examples explored in the research is the Bridgewater Associates and their chief exec, Ray Dalio. He names his building blocks of psychological safety as candor, transparency, leading from error, and we've added conflict in the service of finding what is true and what to do about it. So to give you an example from my own experience, look at these 3 building blocks. I inherited a team which, out of good intention, had been led behind a safety barrier. The nature of their roles and the office positioning meant that they worked closely with the senior leaders and the chief exec. They could hear lots of what was going on, including the tensions and the conversations, but they were told not to worry about it and everything was taken off them. This created a fear of unknown, uncertain ground, a need for extreme reactivity and changeableness. By removing transparency, they felt in the dark and unsafe. My approach, and I'm not sure I can help it, was to boost candor, to boost transparency, and to introduce the concept of learning from error. I moved to a mode of safety net rather than a high wall that nobody could see over. I didn't do it all at once, not overnight, but I answered questions, invited input, shared appropriate tensions and the thinking behind decisions and the options we were considering as a senior leadership team. I moved the conversation away from this protective parent-child conversation, and I moved it to an adult-to-adult conversation where I set an expectation that my team, who were all adult and all professionals, could handle the concept of uncertainty, could handle the concept of conversations that are deeply important and deeply nuanced, and could handle the conversation that answers are not always black and white. The impact of this was a significant increase in their contribution, a stronger sense of their team, challenging questions which led to better solutions, and a real boost to their resilience, both individually and as a collective team. One of my proudest moments was when one of the youngest members of the team successfully communicated her objection to the chief exec and his idea. She managed to change his mind, which is not an easy feat. She did it with knowledge, she did it with information, she did it with her passion for the subject. That is the difference that psychological safety makes. Amy Edmonson's research proves that it's not about being nice. It's about creating conditions where people can take intellectual risks without fear of humiliation, where they speak up when something's wrong, where they experiment, fail, and recover faster. The question isn't whether psychological safety matters. The research is clear, it does. The harder questions are, where are we fooling ourselves that we have it when we don't? Where are we confusing comfort with safety? And what are we asking of already exhausted leaders to build something that's supposed to emerge from team dynamics, not individual heroics? That's the conversation. Under extreme pressure and crisis, psychological safety is key. And any of us know today we are operating in a series of permacrises where we jump from one extreme to another extreme amount of pressure, and our busyness builds. So what is the role of psychological safety in a crisis? There are numerous examples in the research which demonstrate that the existence of good processes and good procedures does not ensure their use. Without psychological safety, we all make little micro assessments of interpersonal risk, and that tends to crowd out our proper, informed, thoughtful responses. We simply fail to recognize the implications of our hesitation, of silence in the moments where we could have spoken up. Psychological safety is a precondition for the effective use of those emergency protocols. But we can't force people to change how they think and act, even when we have formal authority over them. We can only influence. And we can influence by modeling the 3 behaviors dedicated at the end of this book for psychological safety. 1, curiosity. So how do we ask better questions? And for me, that links back to our conversations about the coaching habit. What makes a good question? Where is that curiosity? And how do we drive that more? 2, compassion. Remember that everyone's experience is different and everyone faces hurdles that we may or may not be aware of. That links back to our conversations about the culture map and the differences of nationality and country and societal and community expectations. And then number 3, commitment. When we demonstrate a dedication to what we're trying to achieve and the culture we're trying to lead for, this can be contagious. For me, this links back to our atomic habits conversations. What are the teeny tiny things that we can do on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis that demonstrate our commitment to the life, the culture, the workplace that we want to achieve in order to achieve our goals? So that's curiosity, compassion, and commitment. So the question comes up with, how do you do that? And if it's not about being nice, what is it about? It is about pairing high standards with psychological safety, not one or the other, and never one without the other. If we demand performance without creating safety, this drives concealment and workarounds and fear. And workarounds, if we can't say this doesn't work, this is inefficient, this is a mistake here, this no longer serves us. If we can't say any of those things, we put extra effort, extra time, extra money, extra resource into these workarounds because we don't have the time, the space, the invitation to think of anything differently. So yes, set a high bar, but make it clear that questions, challenge, and admitting mistakes are part of how that work gets done. They are part of that high bar. How do we build repeatable mechanisms for speaking up? We can't rely on courage alone. Yes, there are a few amongst us who are very comfortable with being courageous and brave and asking the pokey questions in the workplace. But you can't rely on them to do that all the time in every situation or catch every single thing. There are only one or two or three of them. And if they get shot down every single time, they're not going to do it again. So under pressure, people default to self-protection. How can we use practical routines like pre-mortems, dissent checks, constructive feedback norms, explicit listening practice, so voice is built into the way in which decisions happen? How do we ask directly for concerns, invite challenge, and respond productively when people raise issues, especially when the message is inconvenient? And the third thing we can do is model the behavior you need from others. If you want openness, go first. Say things like, I don't know, I may be wrong, or what am I missing? Visible fallibility from leaders lowers interpersonal risk for everyone and improves decision quality fast. One of the pushbacks that Amy Edmonson and her fellow researchers received kind of 2024-25 was that psychological safety takes too much time. It doesn't. If you are doing it well, it can cut through all of the fat, and it can cut through and get to the nub of the problem, the nub of the opportunity, the nub of the crisis. And it can help conversations flow faster, quicker, and be more effective, especially when under pressure. But you have to have set systems, behaviors, and expectations in order to achieve that. Psychological safety is not about being nice. It is about making productive disagreement and honest exchange possible. Thank you for coming to the Bookish Club for Leaders today. Thank you for your contributions. There are all sorts of things in there about what's the worst that could happen? How might you assign a black hat to somebody? And whenever you start a conversation or a new project, how might you critique this? What's the difference between being aware of a concept and able to talk about psychological safety and doing it and creating it? And how do you know? You may think you're doing it. You may state that this meeting is psychologically safe, but how do you know if it's working and for whom it's working for? And how are you consistent about that? Just because you declare it doesn't make it so. And how does this show up in safety critical environments where operational risks are true, where everybody is moving and there's lots of moving parts at all sorts of times? How do you invite people in to help keep everyone safe, both physically and psychologically? So next month at the Bookish Club for Leaders, we are going to do something a little bit different. It's bookish with an emphasis on the ish. So we are going to look at the leadership lessons of the wonderful personal favorite, Ted Lasso. So we are going to look at the first 3 seasons. The expectation is not that you have watched them all. You have to. The expectation is that we have a conversation, we see how this is used in practice and what we might like to take from the scripting, the advice, and what we see on that programme. And the timing of this is beautifully aligned for season 4 to drop in August. And we will have a break from the Bookish Club for Leaders in August. And I'd love to see you back on the September after that break. But first, the next Bookish Club for Leaders will be on the 23rd of July, where we will talk all things leadership and Ted Lasso. Thank you very much.